Show starts in 1 minute. Good evening, folks, and a hearty welcome to our drive-in theater. We have a wonderful evening's entertainment lined up for you, one that will provide several hours of pleasurable relaxation and diversion for you and your family.
Like 9 out of 10 film stars, Raquel Welch uses Lux Beauty Soap.
Well, no, I like to be a woman and a man to be a man, you know.
We hope you'll make this a weekly visit. You love the tasty array of snacks we have to offer. There's wonderful new pictures to see. We hope you have a wonderful time.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the Longhouse, the weekly show for the most sensible of centrists. It's been quite a nice week for me. I've been complaining about being sick for like 3 episodes, so it's been a nice week without being sick and catching up on everything that needs to be done. Ludwig Path, how are you doing?
Well, yeah, I'm doing fine. Autumn is creeping in. It's very dark. So I hope everybody's just cozying up around their computers with warm cocoa and blankets.
And revolt against the modern world.
Yes. My copy of The Reign of Quantity by my side.
That's literally me. No, that's not true, actually, because I loaned both of those books away, actually.
Yeah, so someone else is creeping up by the bonfire to by the fire.
But I got my fizzy water, so
yeah,
as I told you, I'm all set for saving the West.
We are ready. I got my lemon scented, cheap, off the shelf brand fizzy drink. Of course, to save money in this economy.
Did you get the store brand version?
Yeah, I did the cheapest store brand, which is surprisingly good.
We got one of those carbonators or whatever it's called, like one of those machines that
soda streams.
The water. No, it's explicitly not a soda stream. It's very important for my wife that it's not a soda stream because they don't look very cool.
I suspected some kind of like anti-Israel boycott reason, but
no,
if they just look
it's
gay,
just,
then that's
to be honest, it was something I think we got as a wedding gift, so we had nothing to, like, we didn't have anything to do with it, and we got it as a gift, as I said, and it's not a soda stream. That's all I know.
How much have you been using it? Like,
well, I mean, there's a reason I wouldn't have bought it in the first place, if you know what I'm saying. Like, we don't use it that much. I tend to prefer, from day to day, I tend to prefer just, regular water over fizzy water. But we usually have, maybe once a week, I'll have a glass or two, like now.
Yeah, I'm like a huge consumer of carbonated water, actually. And for some reason, I had one of these soda stream copy products, but it just never kind of, I mean, I always have some reason why I just get rid of them eventually and continue just to buy these kind of pre-carbonated bottles.
Right.
Even though I might be losing money like in the long term, but it's just, I just don't care for these carbonators for some reason. Can't explain it. It's some vague intuition I have.
I found a screenshot of it. This is the thing. It's probably a fancy, expensive one. Here it is. It's the carbonator.
Well, it looks sleek, I must say. Of course,
the soda streams look very Kenwood Americanized. That's all I can sort of describe it as. This one is a bit more refined, a bit more, metals or aluminums, I guess.
Yeah, I imagine it looks nice and stylish in the kitchen. Just you have to polish it to get off all the fingerprints and all that kind of
Yeah, it's a real
stuff.
hassle. Yeah. Anyway,
Okay.
that's enough gay banter for this this episode. How about a decarbonator? I don't. Do you need a decarbonator for your water?
Sounds like a new market. You should explore that opportunity.
You could
I think
decarbonate your
it's a
water.
great idea, the decarbonator. I think,
Yeah, humble
I didn't. I
decarbonators.
never
as
knew I
well.
wanted this, but now that I have it, I can't live without it.
It's yeah, because of the
potential.
prevalence of all these carbonators these days. There are so many people who are suffering because their spouse carbonates all their water. So we need a decarbonator for the people who don't like carbonated water. That's the
It's
pitch.
very discreet decarbonator that you can put in your pocket and
You
will
can do
deliver
it in
to
the
your
bathroom
door.
without anyone noticing. Yeah.
With a little discreet package with no names on it, and you just put it in your water, it decarbonates it, and you can just drink and pretend that nothing happened.
Yeah. For the flat soda enjoy. Well, I do generally drink flat water when I do drink water. Anyway. Yeah, okay, so apparently that's the thing here because both Nordan and Burkholdt talks about decarbonating Coca-Cola. So apparently that's something people enjoy.
Oh, can't you just get some powder or something like?
I don't. What I have
What's the
heard,
appeal? That's like
No,
like what do you call it, the Kool-Aids or something? I mean, there is a distinct drink
Oh, yeah.
in the United States. They will refer to it like Kool-Aid is like the brand for
yeah,
this,
that's
where
true. But
it's
it's
not
syrup, right? It's like
Yeah, it's like it's just called juice, translated in Norwegian, but it's not fruit
yeah, it
juice. But like
doesn't
they
really
add
work.
some kind
Yeah.
of you add basically this kind of like sugary syrup, of like maybe 1/10 and then 9/10 water, and then you drink that, and there's no carbonation, there's no carbonating or fizzy bubbles in it. But it's a very standard kind of thing to drink with your meals. Although I think it might have gone out of fashion a little bit. But I remember like being a kid in the 90s, that's like everybody was drinking that,
Oh yeah, there
you
was
always
lots
have
of it,
that with,
and
yeah.
going over to grandma's, she'd always make you that. And yeah, at some point that stopped. My mom got very into those like 0-calorie versions of those at one point. But then that stopped as well. And I've, ever since moving out from home, I've really never had an urge to buy that. But maybe some people do.
Yeah, I wonder what happened to it. That would have been an interesting deep dive, maybe. Completely apolitical.
It's still
Just
around. So I
what
mean,
happened
obviously,
to? Yeah.
I mean, maybe when your child gets older, she'll start. Mrs. Luddick Path will bring
Yes.
home the syrup. Yeah.
We'll use,
All
yeah.
right. Well, the only thing I've heard about decarbonating Coca-Cola is that if you have like an upset stomach, right, or if you're feeling queasy, that supposedly helps. But I don't know if that's just like an old wives' tale.
Yeah, I mean, in my experience, you can get, but also carbonated Coke would work if you have an upset stomach. I think it's because of the pH balance or something.
Okay. Interesting. Anyway, let's get on with the actual show here. That's enough of that. So this episode is one of those. Luddick Path and I obviously have our private chat where we talk about things, our lives, and things we read online. And lately, we have been, collecting a lot of articles that is signaling a bit of a push from the anti-woke wings in the political landscape of Norway. And it's not going to be very specific to Norway, really, but it's because I think a lot of people in Europe will recognize the characters or the roles that are being played out here.
Well,
So we thought we'd go through some articles, we'd talk about this stuff for a while, and letting Path, I know you have a lot of feelings about this.
maybe I could sort of present, I think, a little bit of a timeline of how this topic came about, because there's sort of multiple things going on here. It's always very confusing when you're talking about woke, and it still is, even after like being in these cultural spaces for so long. Like these, I always get a headache reading about people are writing about woke or anti-woke, and they're never clear on what exactly the woke is. And I don't mean that as a sort of like shit lib gotcha point where, oh well, you can obviously not define what that is, but seriously, it's actually quite difficult to understand. I think a lot of people have very differing understandings of what exactly it is. So there's of course the idea of like what exactly these woke debates are even about. Oh yeah, I love it. I love it.
That was a pretty good edit.
No,
Sorry.
but the let's say like the first things that I've noticed is that there's been a market shift in opinion from like the sort of state established media in Norway, particularly on two topics, because we've been talking about, you know, what is the future of woke and what's going to happen. Is it going to get more woke, or is woke going to be rolled back? And like from at least these two data points, or what you could say like these sort of transitions in opinion, to me it seems like they're going to roll woke back. The first sort of like mainstream media point is really like the views on Sweden and Swedish immigration and Swedish crime as a result of immigration.
Do you want me to bring up the
think-
article?
We could wait a little bit, because I just need to sort of talk through a little bit like how these things are connected. The let's say, I mean, if you go back 10 years to 2013 and you start bringing up Swedish crime, that would only have been covered in these alternate news outlets like Document, you know, things like Reset, these sort of more alt media type things that are just, you know, like what they would consider far right. It's like the people who are just only writing about Swedish crime, right?
I mean, if you remember back to the previous election, parliament election, and if you remember back a couple of episodes, we had the meme I made of the now leader of the Progress Party, Listhaug. Was she the foreign minister at that point, or was she was basically in charge of like the immigration department, right? This was in like 2016 or something. And it was a whole thing where she went to Sweden to like these the cities that are suffering the most with these problems. And this was written, you know, there was page upon page of articles written about how, you know, this is racist or something, and how this is like Trump-like in her way of doing this, right? It's a media stunt.
Swedish conditions, right? Svenska tillstånd.
And that's where that was the word came from, right?
And they were, the word, you know, we don't want Swedish conditions in Norway. And that's, you know, what are they talking about? They're talking about all these Swedish satellite cities, right? Where all the refugees and all these sort of undesirable third migrants, right? They were just not able to successfully integrate into like the sort of Swedish high trust model of society. So they just ended up creating their own little mini shithole countries in these satellite cities, and they just sort of become, well, okay, they're just going to be there. And then like there's been this political paralysis in Sweden in terms of how exactly do we handle this. I mean, of course, if you read the media, you ought to think that like every Swedish city, it's like Escape from LA or something, like it's complete chaos and anarchy. But it is sort of relegated to certain spaces, and you got the memes with the no-go zones and stuff. So exactly what do you do with these places that are just like these mini shitholes with high unemployment and so on? And of course, the standard mainstream media lines on this was that it's blown out of proportion, it's sort of misunderstood, it's racist to talk about this. But now, like, you have multiple articles that, you know, you can just like search, you go to Aftenposten or some one of these newspapers, just search for Sweden, and there's just articles on articles and articles on, you know, how could this have happened? You know, this is terrible. Like,
we can't let this happen here. We have to We have to be stronger. We have to. We can't be afraid to talk about these things. Is the messaging
We must
now?
be
Right?
exactly. We have to have the discussion, and how could the political leadership in Sweden have ignored it for so long? And it's, of course, I mean, people have been crying about this for like 15 years going on now. So it's, I mean, to us, it's no surprise. But it's just like this now. It's like accepted truth, accepted sort of dogma that, you know, Sweden actually does have this problem, and
Yeah,
we don't
the
want
cartridge.
this
The
issue.
cartridge is
Yeah.
being, you know, inserted into NPC dialogue, right?
Yeah, you can bring this up now and not be racist. Basically, you have the permission to talk about
Yeah.
the Swedish
It's
problem.
it's been loaded into the software of everyone, right? It's
So
okay
that is,
now.
so that's one angle of sort of like, okay, the wokeness in a sense that's being pulled back when you can, when it's like anti-immigrant rhetoric is sort of been mainstreamed. The second point would be the kind of a bit of a switch in attitudes towards the gay rights organizations, particularly the Organisation Fri. You know, that was sort of like the
Yeah,
organization for gay and lesbian rights. We did an episode on this.
yeah,
If you want
we've
to,
mentioned that multiple times.
look at a deep dive. And now, like, Aftenposten has been running these articles, these sort of expose articles about the connections between these gay rights organizations and like pedophile rights groups in the 1980s, demanding that like
pedophile rings,
yes, as well,
masking
which
as
of
pedophile
course,
rights groups, right? And shock and awe, you know, connected to
wow, I
LGBT
never imagined
Yeah.
that these two things were connected. You know that, but and then demanding that they have to distance themselves from that. I mean, which is interesting because it's, I mean, generally, upon even most of history, the concept of sodomy and like what these sodomy laws actually concern themselves with would be things like pedophilia that would be looked upon the same as like man on man relations in a sense. So, I mean, if you're going to then ask sort of the church to distance themselves from sodomy laws, uh, which really are sort of includes pedophilia, and then you're going to ask these gay rights groups to distance themselves from the pedophilia in a sense, like, uh, I mean, you end up with this kind of rolling back of this movement, and almost like this kind of hedge trimming of this gay rights movement. It's a little bit the same as like this LGBTQ without the T
right, making
stuff
it
that's
more
going on now.
presentable,
Yeah,
right?
they have to. We have to go back to the optics of this gay stuff. So we have to cut the P and the T out of the LGBTQ, LST, the alphabet groups, right? But that, in a sense, is a sort of rolling back because up until now, you know, they've been golden in a sense. They've been treated as completely golden. They can do absolutely no wrong. And you could have come out with that talking point 5 years ago, 3 years ago, that, you know, there's a connection between pedophile rings and these gay rights organizations, and you would have been correct.
You wouldn't be platformed.
But
right.
you would not be platformed, and you would be called a conspiracy theorist or like a homophobe or something, or you would have just been browbeat essentially into silence. But now that's also an accepted talking point. So from there, you get to sort of, okay, they're rolling the woke back. And we're also getting to the topic of like anti-woke in general, like as like anti-woke as this kind of thing now, where I wanted to do a
This
Twitter
label
poll.
almost, yeah.
Yeah, a Twitter poll asking Twitter users like who's your favorite like brown skin anti-woke, you know, based influencer. And I realized that it would be impossible because like Twitter only allows maybe 4 or 5 options on the poll, and I would have to do like a list of like 50 people, you know, how many you can think of at the top of your head of like these kind of like brown, if it's either like Asian, like race mixed African guys who sort of come into the West to run this kind of anti-woke stuff and just use that as a sort of clout platform. And I've sort of started to see how ubiquitous this stuff is now. This kind of like, oh wow, look at this the based brown man who's doing like the anti-woke stuff like that.
Yeah.
That's the calling card now. That's just how you do politics as like a brown guy. You're just supposed to appeal to this kind of populist sentiment.
I can't wait for this Iranian guy to tell me what it really means to be a Norwegian. Right?
Yes, this based Indian man, or whether it's like it's Andrew Tate or Vivek Ramaswamy or like Patrick Bet-David. The list just goes on and on. Like we have in the thumbnail, Daniel Chobe who's like this Norwegian Asian guy who's running this sort of culturally liberal, classic liberal newspaper or whatever. That's like, oh yeah, based anti-woke. The left has gone too far.
I think he's running it's actually a newspaper for culture and art, but through that they're taking, you know, a very liberal stance on allowing artists to.
Yeah, I mean, in Norway, that doing culture newspaper, it basically means either you're just running like shitlib defense, or you're doing anti-woke. There's nothing else.
There's no in between. Yeah.
Yeah, not if you're living in this century. Like maybe you could do like the Nerdrum or something and just write about stuff that happened 200 years ago, and then you could have a nice cultural
or
reactionary paper.
Maybe you could make like some weird underground black metal thing.
Yeah.
But even that is quite sketchy, right?
But yeah, the woke thing is just so ubiquitous now, and like my views on it, because it's become so infested with like this kind of brown energy in a sense, that I'm feeling like, you know, my views on Richard Spencer is essentially changing, because I think there was a sort of hobby, like a bit of a hobby horse, maybe like 2 years ago, to sort of dunk on Richard Spencer for having these kind of shitlib opinions, instead of running defense for some of these shitlibs. But when you're seeing like the type of people who are taking to this kind of anti-woke stuff, I'm starting to kind of see more merit in some of the views that he has in like trying to defend like white bourgeois, like putting the dichotomy up. But it's basically this kind of lowly brown kind of populists against like the white bourgeois class.
Yeah,
I don't know how you feel about that, but that's kind of where I've been lately. It's like, damn, you know, maybe what's that, the Thanos meme? Like, maybe I was too harsh, you know, maybe I judged it too harshly.
Well, it's kind of weird, because even though they do wear the label anti-woke, I mean, what they're anti, as you said, is sort of the unseemly parts of the woke, right? Which is sort of, that's the outgrowth that now comes to a head, you know, 100 years in the making. But their argument is, as it often is with, you know, conservatives, well, we should, you know, if we can just go back 20 years, it would be great, right?
So what was that Danny Chobe video that you showed me? It's like, well, you know, we're going to shut up these wokies. And it's like this kind of disjointed rant that he gives about, well, you know, the left
we should
cool.
Just have a conversation, and, you know, have the space in our society for, you know, conversations and liberal views on art and politics, and people should be allowed to be offended. And it's just kind of like, okay, but what are you actually going to do here? Because you're sitting, you know, every institution that you're up against have already made up their mind. They're wokening. They're doing it, right? You're saying, please don't. And then you're sitting there with a bunch of leftists on a panel, right, saying, please don't, because I'd like to be part of your society. And the leftists are saying, no, I don't think so. And the institutions have already made up their mind. So what are you actually going to do here?
Well, yeah, it all seems quite futile, and the spirit is like this. It's like this kind of begging thing, where it's just like this very weak, well, you know, the left used to be so cool, but now it's like you're not cool anymore because you're censoring when people use the word fat and ugly or whatever.
Why I left the left.
That's you know, I just want, you know, I mean, you get it, but there's something about this whole thing that in like the larger scheme of politics, if you look at other areas like economics, geopolitics, it seems so petty. And as I get
really
older as well, there's something just so incredibly petty about this. Of course, it can't be ignored, because like for some people, like this kind of like woke, anti-woke thing, like that's their entire world. And maybe it has been that way for me too. It's only like sometimes you kind of meet, you have like an English term for this, like you met yourself at the door, you see yourself in the mirror, and then you just damn, is that me? Is that what I sound like? You know, and I think like Vivek Ramaswamy was like this turning point for me, just kind of listening to him. Like first you're sitting there just obsessed with this kind of woke, anti-woke stuff, and then you're seeing an actual candidate who's articulate come out and just make these points that you want him to make, and you're listening to it, and you're listening to how just goddamn ridiculous it all sounds, and how just like okay, but like, okay, where's the politics here? Like Okay, so you want to you want the truth about Epstein's client list, and you want to put Hillary Clinton in jail, and you want to like expose Michelle Obama's bulge, and then what? Do you have any ideas about like geopolitics or economics, like
Yeah,
anything
how are you
constructive? Or
actually going to govern? How are you going to use the power?
yeah,
That's
I mean, do you have any views of
But
the
that's
future?
not
It's
what it
just
is.
like
That what I'm saying, like the anti-wokeists are basically pleading with institutions that hold power over them to not step on the gas so hard, right?
yeah, I mean, it's like, well, can we please just have like two genders and I mean,
I promise
weirdly
I'll settle
enough,
down. Just give me the two genders.
yeah, I'll
Right?
calm down.
It's
I just want two genders, please. Just cut the T off. Just cut off the
yeah.
T, please. I just want. We can just do the LGB. But I mean, I'm also the other reason that I think some of this stuff is kind of misplaced is, I mean, if we go back to memory lane a little bit, maybe some of you remember that we did an episode on gargoyles, like long ago, and it might seem like a weird shoe in here, but I right now, like with my wife, I've been watching like many of the seasons of Young Justice. That's like this kind of DC cartoon show. And like, okay,
Right.
before you jump on me for this, right? I mean, because the guy who directed and stood for the project Gargoyles is the same guy who's been doing Young Justice. Like, it's
That
Greg
would make
Weisman.
sense because
And
there's
yeah,
some similarities in the styles and the art, isn't it?
yeah, there is, and in the storytelling as well. And I mean, I'm watching these sort of newer seasons, and I'm thinking like they have all of these kind of like woke talking points that are brought into this, but I'm still able to watch it. I'm asking myself, like, why am I able to tolerate this show that has woke talking points, and I'm not able to tolerate like the new Black Mirror or like the some of these other shows? And it's just coming down to if they continue to make these shows competently, like if they continue to make good video games and good
If only the
TV
propaganda
programming,
was good, like that.
people would have just swallowed this new batch of wokeness. They would have been all on board with this kind of like
But
tranny
that is the essential
stuff.
sort of underlying, realpolitik problem or sort of discourse with the woke anti-woke thing, because the woke, whether they like it or not, represent entropy in that sense. They
Yes,
represent people and choices that is going to lead to a drain on both knowledge and skill, right? And the
exactly. Yeah.
anti-wokes are basically saying, please don't, because we need this to keep running.
Yeah. So
We
the
need the
woke,
gears to keep turning, and the taxes to keep flowing in.
exactly. Yeah. So the woke anti-woke, it becomes like the sort of proxy for like the sort of bioleninist thing, essentially,
Right.
where like a lot of these wokies are in some sense that like they represent just like the loss of competency, and that's kind of the problem. Not
Yeah.
really as much as their talking points, that you just it's just the wrong people being put in the wrong jobs, leading to just shit product, and we can't stay alive with this
Exactly.
shit media product. We need better TV shows. Like we can't. It's creating like we need better circuses in a sense, and that's what the entire struggle is about. Which is again something that, I mean, you should just in a sense reject the whole thing, but it's really more of what I'm
It's
seeing
difficult
now
to
is
reject it when you have to live in it, right?
yeah,
Right in the tiger and all that, but you still have to deal with the consequences, right?
yes. So I mean, I've ranted for a while now, but maybe we should look at some of these articles. I don't know which ones you want to see. You sent me one recently with this kind of like the based anti woke,
Yeah, okay.
the based anti woke Vietnamese teenagers or something.
Yeah, we'll do this because
Yeah,
I said before we started that I don't like, bullying some 18-year-old, but when they put their face in the paper, then I think it's fair game. Let's see here.
yeah. We're just reading an article, right? And we'll try not to bully too much. Keep it general.
So this article, just in a general sense, is about two people. It's about this 18-year-old girl who is being actually. It's the guy in the thumbnail. we'll get to him. You mentioned him, the Dambichois guy. He is her mentor, whatever that means. To be sort of like an anti-woke opinion shaper, I guess. And then there's this guy who's 22 years old, and he's proud to be a member of the Progress Party, which is colloquially the the far right, in massive air quotes, party. Let me see. Let's see here. Let me zoom this in. So it starts with her. It's an interview with this girl first, and she says, "I hope I haven't ruined my life." She's worried that after the interview with Bege, the newspaper, that she will now be cancelled by the woke activists. So why do you still choose to take a stand in this case? Well, I'm doing it because I think it's important that young anti-woke have someone else that they can relate to. And that is not just boys, but also girls who think that the woke has gone too far. Especially in the last week, the term has been thrown into the Norwegian cultural debate. When is this from? This is from March. The term has been thrown into the Norwegian cultural debate, among other things, about the changes to controversial words such as thick and ugly in the children's books by Roald Dahl. People watching this show might remember that. Obviously, we have a bit of a love for Roald Dahl here, given his heritage. I grew up reading a lot of his books, so... During the film festival in Berlin, the gala premiere of Norwegian children's film Het Super was postponed. An anti-racist film organization believed it contained stereotypical portrayals of people of color. Blah, blah, blah. Opinion Young's 2022 report showed that as many as 52% of young people no longer dare to say what they think in public for fear of being cancelled. Which is, whether real or not, the perception that half of the population of young people can't really express their opinions is kind of dire, right?
Yeah, I mean, it does. I mean, the fear is there, regardless of how real this is for people's lives. I don't think that this woman in the article is going to be canceled. I think if the mainstream newspaper is running your story in a sympathetic light.
No, am I going to get canceled?
Yeah, I might get canceled for saying this, but I'm going to be a little bit edgy.
She said to the biggest newspaper in Norway. Yeah.
If they're putting you on and they have a good picture of you and they're running this piece, then of course you've won already.
Yeah.
This is the trophy of this article, right?
If they didn't want you to be there, you wouldn't have been contacted. So this paper has interviewed 3 young Norwegians who believe they're against the current in the debate they themselves call the culture war. They believe they represent a side of the debate that is undercovered in the media, and they do not fear any dissenters. Earlier, Jack Chen explained why he chose to defend controversial figures such as Andrew Tate and Jordan Peterson. I had to have a laugh at this, controversial figures such as Andrew Tate and Jordan Peterson.
Yeah,
I think Tate is more controversial than Peterson.
I think so too, but there's a lot of stuff about Tate that was not uncovered at this point. I think he was probably less controversial here than he is now.
That's true. Yeah. Yeah, it's not. This is before they're not defending any sort of sex trafficking or anything. I might get cancelled for saying this. Says the tamest thing.
Yeah,
we'll get to the tame takes.
Yeah,
we'll get to the lukewarm takes. Yeah. Sunniva and I can't even say what Nan Kien Yen Hyun, something like that, also want to break with the stereotypical image they believe that the society has of Gen Z. They're tired of their generation being associated exclusively with trans activism, climate activists, and political correctness. Well, it's apparently half of you, right? So...
Well, I also associate them with anti-woke, like Andrew Tateism, actually. I like Andrew Tate TikToks and what do you call it? The Beautiful Girl song.
We're at the cusp of a conservative revolution, Ludwig Path. The Gen Z are gonna...
Yes. Please, Gen Z,
I still hold firm that our revelation, we talked about the white buses and the youngsters being shipped to Poland to look at, concentration camps and all that. I hold firm that, Gen Z isn't conservative because they are actually conservative. They just don't care about the things that we're polling them about, right? Which makes them poll conservative. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah, that it's sort of, it looks like that when you
Like the
poll them
boomer
because
ask them about things they don't care about, and when they say I don't care or they say no, right? That registers as being far right.
it's really weird how this sort of stuff works, where you have people like, if you just don't give a shit, then that is kind of being far right. I mean, how many times is that the case? When you look at if you ask someone about like Ukraine or something and say, I don't give a shit about Ukraine, then that's, well, you're far right, right? Well, what about the weather? I don't give a shit about it. Okay, you're far right.
Right.
It's a bizarre thing. That's just kind of how it looks if you're sort of not interested. If you don't vote, that kind of makes you in that camp.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. So
reminder that the average Norwegian normie thinks that Ben Shapiro is far right. The average Norwegian normie probably thinks Bernie Sanders is far right because that's the meme, right?
well,
That
I mean,
any American politician is to the right of Norway.
I mean, are they wrong though? I mean, in some senses,
In the
Ben
sense
probably
of
is far right. I
in
mean,
the sense of Bernie Sanders, they're wrong. I think if you
yeah,
look
yeah,
at
of course. I think they use
what he
Bernie
actually
Sanders
wants
as
to implement, he's a hardcore socialist, right?
No, I don't think Norwegians think Bernie Sanders is far right, but like, are they wrong about Ben Shapiro being far right? Like, could you elaborate on that, Norman? Like, just to
From
see,
their point
like,
of view, obviously he is, right?
well, I mean, even in an American context, I think sort of like, okay, he's like a free market guy, but the like being anti-free market, it's a very recent kind of development on the right. I think, like most of the history that I've been alive, like, being very free market guy, that's been like a far right position in a sense. And
Maybe we're have different different definitions here, but I'm thinking of Ben Shapiro and I'm thinking of a guy who's still on air, has a New York Times best-selling book, is being platformed, and by definition that doesn't mean he's far right, and that means he's not far right.
well, I mean, he's a conservative Jew, right? And that allows him a lot more leisure in terms
Most
of what he can
powerful
say
creature in the
and
Americas,
not
yeah.
say, right? So I think like his opinions on gender dynamics, or like dressing modestly, or people should be married and have kids, or like Israel should like be an ethno state or stuff like that. I mean, in that context, he has views that are traditionalist in a sense.
Oh
I
yeah,
think
definitely. Yeah.
even though, like, I mean, he's allowed the mainstream stuff because of the ethnic factor in a sense.
Fair enough, yeah.
But I do think that like far right Jews are far right. It's just that he's Jewish, right?
Well,
And
if you go to Israel, you'll find far right Jews who are pro Israel, right, and pro everything that keeps Israel an ethno state, right?
sorry, just what was the question again? I lost you a little bit.
Oh no, it was just Nordan as a reminder that the average Norwegian normally thinks Ben Shapiro is far right.
Yeah,
I mean, maybe, but it depends on how switched on you are politically, right? Because if you're not very into American politics as a Norwegian, your only interaction with Ben Shapiro would be like some journal calling him far right in an article.
But what's my question is, okay, what's the case for like Shapiro being a centrist or like a leftist or something? I just don't understand what that would be.
I'm just saying it's a matter of perspective. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah, I'm not saying he's like our guy, but I would, if you had to place someone in a political matrix or something, he would definitely be on like the right end, I think.
Oh yeah, definitely. Yeah. Okay. Let's see here. Sunniva, the girl here, used to be woke. I didn't know anything else. It was just what everyone else was. So I didn't ask too many questions. We didn't learn to be critical at school, says Sunniva, which is, yeah, great. Today, she identifies as anti-woke and is strongly against the woke culture. At school and in the media, she feels the debate is often very limited. She believes that parts of the cultural debate are censored by the media. Woke is stage denial, as in platform denial, and the cancellation culture. Uh, Getting hung up on things like equality and the gender debate, believing that everything should be equal. But not everything can be the same. In my opinion, we should try to even out the starting point, but each person has to work and grab opportunities that they have access to.
Just
She's cur-
I'm sorry, I'm just like completely OCD brain here, but just bring up the Vingle comments. See, and then the next one. I mean, okay, we'll just go down the list. If he's anti-gay marriage, right, and if he's like, anti-abortion, and he's like pro-free markets and pro-guns, and like I'm just not seeing the case for Ben Shapiro being on the left in a sense. It's because he's not like a Hellenist who uses the Greek statue with the laser eyes or something on Twitter. Therefore, he's not right wing. Yeah, please just explain it to me in the comments. Sorry for derailing. I just I just got a little hung up on it.
Here you go. She's currently part of a mentoring program where she has editor, is it Danby Chua? I don't know how you say that name, as her mentor. But that's the guy. This is the guy. He's the editor of that paper, and he's been basically, grifting off anti-wokeism since like 2020s by being like an anti-woke guy, basically. Let me just skip ahead a bit.
Yeah, we did an episode on Helge Luros and the sort of reset and the let's say positioning yourself as being like the anti-woke populist newspaper in Norway, right? And this guy, like Dan Chobe, he actually pulled it off. He took the mantle of that sort of quote unquote respectable classical liberal right-leaning newspaper that the reset guys actually wanted. So that's kind of where they are in the Norwegian media spectrum.
But he is coming at it from a like an artist, an art milieu perspective. In the way he talks, what he writes about, the people he interacts with are, part of the art culture in Oslo, which I think is an important distinction, really, because he's attacking this. Because he's doing that, he's got an angle which is kind of strange at times. I can't really put my finger on it, but I think that I don't think it lends him any more strength. It's actually a bit of a weak point because his default is very eccentric and artistic, and let me produce what I want to produce.
And it's a good angle. I mean, it's sort of. I think especially we've been talking about doing an episode on Slöseri Ombudsman and looking at all of these like Norwegian art projects because that's where it's just a content mill, right? All of these projects that get funding in Norway, that's just these absolutely insane woke feminist dog shit projects that you can just look at a reel and just sit and laugh at all of these ridiculous art projects that you have, and you could just make content reacting to that stuff, and we will in the future. We just haven't gotten around to it yet. I think we feel like it's almost too easy pickings for this show.
Right. What do you and Danby have in common? We're both followers of Jordan Peterson. Danby has made me see the importance of debates. It is particularly important that people like us contribute because we are both considered minorities in Norway. We don't go around thinking that we are minorities, says Cinema. So here we go. It's they have special powers because they're minorities. Again, they know, as minorities, they know what it really means to have a Norwegian democracy.
Yeah, it's great that they can take up the mantle. I mean, there's some like sort of come late isms to it where. I mean, that's sort of one of the things that I've been thinking about with all these brown anti-woke influencers that are coming into Europe, coming into the USA, and so on. That they've kind of been watching, they're like 30 to 50 years behind on the cultural programming, and they're showing up to the United States, and they feel like the party is over in a sense. And like for the native populations, the party is over, but they're trying to just kind of resurrect, trying to just breathe life back into it again, because they actually want a part of that,
exactly,
part of that kind of freedom stuff that they were promised, that they saw on TV.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, at least I'm assuming that's kind of like the animating kind of mechanism for why this is happening, and that way you have so little energy from the white population, because they just kind of, they're fatigued by it completely.
Yeah, that's the thing,
drained.
right? I don't want to, browbeat them for doing it. I'm just saying they shouldn't have to be the ones doing this, ideally. But here we are.
I mean, of course, some of them are completely insincere, where there's like people like Andrew Tate or something. They can sort of point out that there's an issue, but they don't actually have any solutions other than grifting money from gullible people who just want things to be better.
Right. Although blah blah blah, something about her, studies. I don't care if people don't like me. If people don't like me because I have different opinions, that's not a big deal. Blah blah blah. Oh yeah, too sexist. Sunniva knows that she has unpopular opinions that provoke others. For example, she thinks that equality is not a relevant topic in Norway anymore. I can do anything that a man can in Norwegian society. I can take any education I want. I can become a mother when and where I want to myself. How much more equal can I get? Nor does she experience that as a minority any systematic discrimination in Norway. Sunniva is half Central American through her mother. Frankly, I believe that the solution to racism is simply to stop talking about racism, because therefore we start talking because before we started talking so frequently about racism, I didn't see any skin colors. There it is. It's almost as nowadays, it's almost the first thing I notice in a person. I myself am willing to overlook the few people who are racists. Well, but the thing is, Sunniva, how do we solve this without the racist people? Right?
Yeah, this is the Fresh Prince stuff.
Exactly. We can't really go back. The Pandora's box has been opened, and it's too late. And it's like, yeah, it worked for like 5 years in the 90s, right? And then it started going downhill, and just because you don't like where it's now doesn't mean you can just reset to some other point of the slide.
I mean,
it's
if there's enough people pressing the issue, then you have to deal with that issue. You can't just like go back to pretending that it doesn't happen. It just becomes this elephant in the room, especially as these populations keep growing. I mean, if you have like a sort of a majority culture, and they, kind of like just push these other populations down, then you can sort of go on pretending. But there's been too much pressing of the issue. Like, you can't revert. You can't just like ignore this stuff now. It is an actual reality, lived reality, as these shit lips like to say.
Yeah, and the white man isn't playing that game yet, but what happens when he does, right?
I think, sorry, keep going.
Her opinions have also affected her friendships. She says that others have distanced themselves from her because she says she speaks frankly, is what the paragraph is saying. When I'm with my friends, I might be a bit like a 14-year-old boy. I don't have much of a filter. One topic in particular engages her. For Sunniva, there are only 2 biological sexes. Nothing has so far changed this understanding for her. So hopefully she won't get cancelled for this, for saying that there are 2 sexes.
Walking
I'm shifting the Overton window. Yeah.
I might get shot, I could lose a lot of social capital here, but I'm going to say it, guys. 2 genders. The truth. That's the truth. God is real. There are 2 genders. We need the free market to we need fossil fuels. They're simple as.
I don't want to blindly. Okay, so here's the other thing, right? I don't want to blindly believe that there are more than one gender. It is an objective biological truth, and someone has to prove to me otherwise, right? And here's the other part: is that anyone
Is that
who's
a
part of the anti.
typo?
What do you mean?
Is this more than one?
Oh, sorry. Yeah, the translate is multiple
Oh, I see.
genders. Yeah. So there are
Multiple,
more
yeah,
than
there's
two
a
genders, I
typo.
guess,
More
is
than two
the.
genders, yes.
Yeah. But this is the problem as well, because, the only fallback is sort of materialism for these people. In a debate and philosophical sense, right? She can't just a Christian could literally just point to God, right, and say, well, men and women, that's what God made. But someone who isn't that, which is pretty much everyone in this anti-woke coalition, right, has to fall back on shaky scientific grounds as their basis, which is the institutions and the tradition that has led to the point where we are today, right? The
Well,
science,
yeah,
we've talked about this before. The science today says there are more genders, so I don't know what you're trying to refer to, right?
yeah. I mean, if you're going to refer to, I mean, it is probably a problem for, I think, both. Yeah, of course, you could be like a conservative Protestant and say that the Bible says this or whatever, but even like some of these big churches now will just accept that there are more genders than one. So you end up with the same problem if you're attached to some kind of papacy or something. But yeah, the institutions, of course, I mean, you could look at just say, well, biology says this, but then you could find some expert that says something else. I don't know. The problem is that you have this entire bureaucracy that's sort of, it's not just the idea that there are more than one gender, and there's confusion between like the actual objective physical realities and the sex gender stuff, because in Norway
No, I
there's
mean, I'm
not
not
two
saying there
words
are
for it, right?
scientists at with microscopes furiously arguing over chromosomes. I'm just saying that the institutions you're appealing to here in this sentence, right, have already failed you. So I don't know what you're doing,
Yeah, it's
trying to fall back on them.
I think that's, they're sort of referring to a kind of an expert system that a lot of people still have faith in, because
That's what I'm
I
saying.
think if you
Basically
would,
appealing. He's basically appealing to an idea of scientific, the scientific method and the Enlightenment, right, age of Norway, or Britain for that matter, right? She's
well, I think, yeah,
invoking the Enlightenment period. That's what she's doing. In the
well, they're
same
doing
way a
that, but
Christian would
even
invoke God.
the thing is that even the Christians that I've seen in this debate has invoked science for this. Like, I mean, what's like a Truls Mæhle or whatever, like the people who were in like the Christian party now, the newly formed, the rebranded as the Conservatives. Like, if you hear them making this debate, they're also going to make the sort of case that no, it's two sexes. That's like a biological,
Yeah.
that's a scientific,
No, I
fact.
get
And
why. Like you can objectively prove that there are two sexes, right? That's fine. But that's my point, is all of these anti-woke don't really have anything to fall back on. The only thing they have to fall back on to literally base their arguments on, right? To be the philosophical or, I guess moral grounding for their arguments why they're anti-woke. That platform is a platform that has already failed, right? And you could say, and I would say, well, we need to recreate that, and that's a separate conversation, right? But they believe that this still exists. Out there is some sort of like based Enlightenment science world, right? That hasn't completely derailed like ours, but it doesn't exist anymore.
no, they don't have that institutional support. But of course, I mean, assuming that they, it's not completely static. They might roll back some of the wokery in science as well, as far as we know. So I see what you mean, but and if it was like 2 years ago, I'd just 100% agree with you. But I'm seeing that like they might roll back some of the woke stuff
In
science as
practice,
well.
right? In the actual
Yeah.
politics of this, I do agree. What you're saying, what you're getting at here, that they're going to push back on it to something that's more objective and scientific, right? I'm just
Because
saying, you're rolling it back. How long can you keep that boulder rolled back?
yeah, no, it's
I guess
it's a
that's
good
the underlying discussion we could have here.
it's a very interesting point, but like with the stories that we read with Esther Pirelli losing his medical license, that that's like one of these main trans it's not a what do you call sexologists in Norway, one of these main sexologist influencers in Norway that's kind of lost his medical license, and that was because of the bureaucracies.
And confirmed groomer, yeah.
Yeah, and confirmed group, and because of these scientific bureaucracies, it wasn't it wasn't some kind of like populist outrage that did this. So that's why I'm thinking that they might have to slightly cut off some of these more extreme edges to retain some of that credibility that's been shredded so hard these last years.
Exactly, yeah. And there is still hope that you can get competency back into these positions. I'm not denying that. The question is, how and for how long, I guess. Sunniva has learned that the anti-woke side of politics is primarily associated with men. But I feel like I am the only girl who dares to be on. She's not like other girls, guys. She's not like other girls.
There's plenty of space for female.
I mean, I'm both Ludwig and I are, we're taken. So, but any of you guys who are reading this, she's not like other girls.
Nice.
I feel like I'm the only girl who dares. The only girl who dares, and she's like a Central American. So I mean, some of you right wingers are
based Catholic integralist genetics combined with Aztec.
Yes.
Yeah.
The feel when no QT Castiza GF or something. I'm the only girl who dares to be honest, and it is with the boys I find that I have the least filter. They usually have the same opinions as me. The girls tend to be more accepting of new thoughts, but I need proof to be convinced. Why I'm not going to get into this. This is probably an entire stream on men and women and politics. Just read Schopenhauer, I guess. Why is your vote important to the public? Because there are not many minorities who necessarily have my opinions and who dare to come forward in the media with them. My aim is to convince people at the same time that I feel like I want to make a positive difference for society.
Really, not that many minorities. I think there's two sexes.
Sorry, what?
There's not that many minorities with these opinions. Like, I think you'd have a hard time finding minorities to think that there are two genders. I think it'd be quite usual, actually. I mean, if you sit and just talk to general minorities, right? But this is the typical problem as well.
You go to local mosque tomorrow. Because tomorrow is prayer day. So everyone listening to this, go to your local mosque and see if you can convince them about the genders.
I need to tell you guys about the two genders. We accepted the gospel of two genders.
Speaking of going to, we can do that after, because we have something about like based Muslims as well. And then there's this guy. This was the other guy. Because he is a part of the Progress Party, and he talks about how hard that is to be a based minority, because people have presumptions. He's a minority and he's in the racism party. Why? Let's see here. What does a young Norwegian Progress Party politician with a minority background believe? None believes primarily that the woke has gone too far. Do you hear that, guys? The woke has gone too far. He's happy when there are dissenting voices in debates because he experiences that those who are most woke get the most media attention. For example, and here's Choi again, big fan of him. He's also in favor of strict immigration. He believes that far too many years Norway has not dared to make any demands from their immigrants. When you come here, you will not live on the dole. I believe that far too many people choose to cling to their own environment. It will be wrong. Hang on, you're a Vietnamese. That's literally what you do, right? I mean, do you have any experience with the Vietnamese?
Yeah,
they're like the most insular immigrant community in Norway. You basically only see them on Saturdays when they go to church. Otherwise, they're like complete. Or when you go to like a obviously, if you go to like a takeaway Chinese food stuff, right?
Yeah, I can confirm.
You can't, or you can.
I can. I'm
Yeah.
confirming it. Yeah.
But of course, because they basically just stick to themselves and never cause any trouble. Nobody cares. So in a sense, right? Where was it? Who was it that talked about this? Must have been like a cigar stream or something at some point, where there was discussed like what configurations of multicultural societies are possible, and the one that the Vietnamese are practicing is one that is possible, right? The one where you are insular as a community, as an immigrant community, but you basically just you willingly subject yourself to the ruling culture, right?
Yeah, I mean that seems to be in a lot of these places where yeah, you stick to yourself and you have to. It's at least you cede to the emperor some things.
That's what I mean, right?
I mean, but even with like the sort of the let's just say like the more mixy parts of multiculture, that could also it could work with certain people. It's just when you're getting into the echelons of like the more tribalistic
Yeah,
peoples in a
yeah.
sense, and who are not willing to sort of go along with the culture, or let's say you have some groups that are falling behind other groups that aren't.
Yeah.
It's a bit of a powder keg, to be
You
honest.
get
I
into
mean,
the oppression Olympics. Now that's a word I haven't used in a long time.
oh, welcome to the oppression Olympics. Yeah,
Gamergate. Yeah. That's a
the
real
progressives.
2013 word, isn't it?
Yeah.
Oppression Olympics. Yeah. He's in favor of strict immigration, pulling the ladder up behind him.
Unashamed.
Yeah. Let's see here. Yeah, between 1975 and 1999, Nova received several thousand Vietnamese boat refugees. Nan's father was one of them, together with his mother, two younger siblings. Blah, blah, blah. In childhood, and there's something about his childhood, which I don't know is that interesting. Should we go on to the Muslim stuff?
Yeah,
Or should we
Muslim
do,
stuff.
do Muslim stuff? This is a bit of a similar thing. See here, I will translate. Okay. The mosques are opposing Norwegian values. This is a what's it called? An opinion column?
Opinion piece.
Opinion piece. So this isn't a report,
Polemic,
right?
perhaps. Yeah.
By Almir Martin. Almir Martin, yeah, local politician for the Oslo Centre Party. The state has spent hundreds of millions on integration and community work for the mosques. The imams try to counteract that work. On Monday, 25th of September, the Muslim Dialogue Network presented a report on children's education in the mosques, the so-called Quranic schools, in collaboration with the Cooperative Council for Faith and Beliefs. The report addressed topics such as, what do children learn in mosques? So this is basically Sunday school, right, for Muslims. Are there any challenges in teaching or in what you learn in the mosque? What does the research say, and what do the Quran school teachers say? The report, written by Nora Egan, associate professor at blah, blah, blah. The report mainly focused on how the Quranic schools strengthened the Muslim identity of the children who participated. Egan pointed out that the children who participate are primarily Norwegian and not migrant children. I don't really know what that means, but
In mosque schools,
that seems kind of strange.
there's like some translation hiccup there, or
let me check. No, which I don't really get. Anyway, furthermore, the mosques have two main concerns. They want to develop social belonging to one's faith and community, and the family's cultural community. And they want to develop a belonging to the society at large, basically, which sounds good. You know, they want to develop the faith of the Muslims and the cultural community, and also connect that to Norwegian society. Integration, right? But in reality, shock and awe, it is not quite like that. And we who work in the field of integration have experienced in this. Oh, we have a super chat from Hunger the Dye Merchant for $5. If not for traveling to Europe, I'd never have had the displeasure of discovering sparkling water. It's disgusting and cringe. Well, I will say that most is, but there's nothing that beats a what's the green Italian sparkling water? The Pellegrino. That's really good sparkling water. That's the one. Like, I'm not a huge sparkling water fan, really, but that one is. I mean, it's very expensive if you buy it here.
Is this going to be a U.S. versus Europe thing now, like the sparkling water wars?
The Americans don't understand the.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't.
The exquisite Pellegrino sparkling water.
I stayed out of the tacos versus pie stuff, but I'm willing to go to fight.
Yeah, start making the memes,
here,
guys.
You know? I'm gonna put on the war paint here and defend sparkling water against like shit.
Start
American
investing
soda.
in some meme stocks, guys, because the call is now. By
we're
tomorrow,
going to war over this one.
It's going to be runaway. Yeah.
I remember, I had actually when I was. It's not that easy to get sparkling water when I lived in the United States for over a year, and I had a roommate, and it's like, for 2 days I had some kind of like stomach sickness where I lost all the water in my body. I was just completely dehydrated, just puking all the time, and. The only thing I wanted was like Pellegrino. Like he asked if I could get you something. It's like, oh, Pellegrino. I just want like a small bottle. I could just sit and sip a little bit, and I felt like home. It felt good. It was.
It's something about like the size of the bubbles in that water, because a lot of sparkling water has like the bubbles. The carbonation is too strong, I feel. Yeah. Anyway. Two of the large mosques, blah, 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 are described as follows. The organization wants children and young people to feel a sense of belonging to Islam as well as to society at large. And the emphasis is on a low threshold belonging to the mosque and to each other. It's a bit of but it's basically, anyone can join. That's what they're saying. Okay. This leaves out with many questions for those who have followed what is going on in these conservative religious circles and know that they do not exactly embrace Norwegian society. I suppose this guy might know because his name is Almir, so I assume he's a Muslim, right?
Does he look like a Muslim? I mean, this must be one of these.
He might be like an Eastern European Muslim, right?
Yeah, it might. Yeah, some kind of Russian.
What is Almir?
It's possible.
What kind of name is that? It doesn't sound very Norwegian. Almir. Yeah, I don't know. One of the imams at the Rabito Mosque is Jonas Storm. In a Friday prayer that Rabita has filmed and shared on his channel, he emphasized something completely different. Oh, wow. If only there were, a country across the pond who have 20 years experience with this that could help us, but alas. Namely, the children should only adapt to a certain extent, and that the Norwegian school system does not teach them the difference between halal and haram. Muslim children, and this is a quote, Muslim children in Norwegian schools do not learn what is halal and what is haram at school. And that is therefore extremely important that the Muslim parents come together and arrange Islamic-friendly life that ensures their children are brought up in what is halal and what is haram. Society at large doesn't do that. It is not the case that when we send our children to school, they teach them what is halal and what is haram. On the contrary, they may be encouraged to do wrong things because according to Norwegian norms, it is okay. And we must integrate to a certain extent, but not to the extent that we avoid halal and haram or do things that are wrong just because we live here, he preaches. Which, based, but I wish it wasn't in my country.
Well, there comes the sort of. I mean, it's not really a double standard if you live in a country. I mean, it's completely consistent, and but the question is always then, if you want people to be religious, but say you have religious freedom, but you're also going to live here, exactly what does secular Islam look like? And I don't think
Exactly. Yeah.
that's
Are
been
they going to
answered
bake the
yet.
gay cake? Right. That's the question.
Yeah, how much
That
are you actually going to
I've said
demand
it
of
before.
them?
At some point, the Muslims are going to have like a moment like that, and we're going to have to see
Well, I
where
think
the
they're already having it. That this is their answer to it. They're just going to close off and live in these more insular communities and not giving a fuck about what's happening in elections and that kind of stuff. I think that is their answer to
I
most of
guess.
this stuff. It's not with a bang but a whimper. I think people expected more heads to roll, but most of them are surprisingly passive, I think.
Yeah. Jonas Storm in his talk builds in groups and out groups, Muslims and non-Muslims. He encourages the young to stick to the Muslims as a social group. Otherwise, he says, we will be like them. Be with the believers. Be with those who desire the will of Allah. Furthermore, Storm presents society's values as impure and indirectly as sick. According to him, Muslims can be infected by their surroundings and be led away from Allah. At the same time, he emphasizes that Muslims have rights, such as freedom of religion. He thus uses secular rights as a crowbar for segregation. I mean, this article is just, we're living in clown world. If we can call something culturally racist, this has to be it. You couldn't figure out a better word than culturally racist.
Man discovers freedom of association for the first time.
Is horrified. Yeah.
I had no idea this was possible. But I mean, it is. You end up reaching this question anyway. I mean, this is kind of the.
Northern says based question mark. I don't even know what level of clown world we're on now, where like everything is simultaneously based and cringe.
It's confusing these days, for sure. I mean, with of course, this guy is wrestling with something that everybody has to essentially wrestle with, that certain belief systems are not compatible and that you can't really have this kind of mutual respect between everyone. I mean, bringing it back to something I mentioned earlier, but I've been watching like Young Justice and some of these like Greg Weisman cartoon shows. It's interesting because like they present in a sense as this sort of progressive utopia, a little bit like
Exactly.
Star Trek in a sense, and the idea that you have all these kind of groups, even like people who are Muslim and Catholic and so on, that are in the character roster, along with like people who are gay and in like polycules with fish people and stuff like that. And they all somehow, like, even though they're devoutly religious, they still treat each other with dignity and have a certain level of respect for common goals and negotiations. And there's like a certain level of sensitivity there in terms of like trying to give each other space to practice their own ideas. And it's like this kind of very like high IQ progressive. If everybody was like 130 IQ and progressive, then the world could be like this. But it is fiction ultimately, because you run into problems like this where you basically say that, okay, if what we believe is actually true, and like the Quran is actually true, well, okay, then being around these people who don't believe that is just going to ruin our chances at salvation and being holy. And it's absolutely the case. If this is what you believe in, then being around the heretics will not improve your chances of living a holy life. I mean, at all.
Neither for living in Oslo. So
no, it won't. So, well, then you what's the logical choice? Is that you have to segregate yourself and make the best of that situation.
But that's not allowed because it's a democracy.
Well, yeah,
we
then
all
it doesn't.
have to participate.
You can't participate then. But the question is then, why are you here in the first place? So it's a bit of an issue in terms of how we're going to pull that. And no matter what direction you pull in, it hurts. It just always hurts.
It does.
And
yeah.
It hurts to let it stay as it is. It hurts to pull on it. It's like a broken leg or something.
Exactly. Yeah.
So I mean, I wish I had some. I mean, of course, I have some thoughts in my head about how this should be solved.
Sure, but
in terms of stuff that fits into the proper political dialectic, then I have nothing.
Yeah, there's no vocabulary present in the political dialectic these days to be able to formulate any worthwhile solution. Right, that's the issue. Sermons and messages like this are not included in the report. One can only wonder why. Homophobic attitudes. Oh no. That the mosques also have no liberal view of homosexual cohabitation should come as no surprise. Islamic Cultural Center is a Pakistani mosque located in It's called Greenland. It's a part of Oslo. The mosque's Imam Hamid Farouk said in August 2022 that Muslim homosexuals should contact him for guidance from the mosque. And according to Farouk, homosexual cohabitation and adultery are as big a sin as murder. Exactly, something. They're trying to. The mosque is trying to quell their homophobic attitudes. They're working on it, guys. From the outside, these two.
They have to say stuff like that, right? I mean, I realize that more and more. If you're living in this kind of society and you have these demands put upon you, then like the easiest thing to deal with this is just to say okay and not do it. Like they're just, okay, fill in the paperwork. Okay, well,
what are you gonna do? Punish me? Yeah.
Well, I mean, do you have like homophobic speech in your mosques? No. Okay, do you teach this and that to your kids? No. Are you in compliance with all of these progressive values?
Yes.
Okay,
leave us
alone.
You get caught,
thank you.
You're like,
Goodbye.
we'll do better. We swear. I'm sorry. Yeah.
No, so okay, we'll fix this stuff and they'll just keep going anyway. But it's the easiest way to be kind of left alone in a sense. Like I've realized that with society and with bureaucracies especially, is that you fill in the paperwork and if it's done correctly, then they leave you alone. And otherwise, like they're not going to actually, the quality assurance it's just in the paperwork. It doesn't matter if whatever's actually happening or not happening. So, let's see, there's a comment here.
Muhammad was actually incorrect about sodomy, and we will change our centuries-old religious teachings to fit in. We promise. A day in the life of a civil servant. Yeah,
it's in the spirit of Muhammad, not the actual word. What is that? Not the word of Muhammad, but the spirit of Muhammad is gay pride. Yeah.
From the outside, these two mosques give off the impression of being moderate, but what is preached inside is something completely different. My experiences and observations from almost my entire working life, including 10 years as a minority advisor for the Directorate of Integration and Diversity. Oh, he's a professional minority, this guy. Are that children and young adults... Are that children and young adults are far more religious than we assume. Well, hey. Wait, careful now. Are you saying that children are influenced? We can't have that kind of talk. That sounds very far right. I've experienced demands for prayer rooms, halal food, gender-segregated swimming lessons, gender-based refusal of handshakes and incitements against home. Oh my god. It's all so tiresome, Bloody Path. It's all so tiresome. Teachers have said that they find the religious classes in school difficult when it comes to criticism of Islam. Pupils with a Norwegian Muslim background believe that criticism of Islam is Islamophobic and racist.
Oh no.
A survey from 2013, blah, 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 shows that second-generation immigrants do not become any less religious than their parents. In other words, more time spent in Norway does not necessarily lead to less religiosity, as was first assumed. When I asked the children and young adults where they got these attitudes and views from, well, they all answer exclusively the mosques. It's sabotaging the integration efforts. One could argue that Rabita and the ICC mosque do not value the Norwegian community and secular values, with the exception of freedom of religion. In 2016, wow, this is a really long... Oh, never mind. In 2016, researcher Masoud Ebrahimnejad carried out a large survey of mosques in Norway on behalf of the newspaper Utrop. The conclusion here was that the mosques need supervision, both in the money flow and in the activities and training that is given in the various mosques. This conclusion is in stark contrast to the Dialogue Network's recent report. I think Ebrahimnejad is right. The state has spent hundreds of millions on integration and community work in the mosques. Imams, like Storm, try to sabotage that work. All right. That's So that's the, this based guy, who I thought was a Muslim himself. Maybe he's not, but I mean, considering he was a professional minority at some point, he probably is. Who is shining a light on the imams teaching the Muslims to be Muslim.
I think, as Nordan said, I have a hard time believing that they're able to retain religiosity at the same rate as their parents. But maybe I'm wrong. I mean, they
I find
pulled
that a
off
bit
the
hard to believe too.
impossible. Like they can just kind of live in this country and not be deracinated on some level. If they must be doing an extremely good job. But again, the question is like, is this not, what exactly did they expect in terms of integration? Like, how much of the sandwich you have to eat, to live here? If like, is paying taxes enough? It's like making money and paying taxes, and or do you have to?
Yeah, I mean, you're back
Pride
to
parade as well.
That's sort of the thing. I remember listening to Distributus debating the guy with the guitar, vocal distance.
Yeah.
And I mean, that seems to be sort of the liberal, and I'm including a lot of the anti-woke people in this, right? What they want from immigrants is, show up on time, pay taxes, and don't go against corporate HR rules, which is not how you build a nation. You can't build a nation on that, right? Actually, Charlemagne is in chat. He has a really good Substack article on this. I think he wrote it for the Old Glory Club. So I'm going to link that if people, if people want to read that as part of sort of this thing. Post that in case people haven't seen it. Here's the link. Go read that. It's really good. Do we have any other articles here, or do we just want to?
No, I think we're almost at 90 minutes, so maybe we could do some questions, and then we can get.
All right, I'll have a look at chat. If there's anything. I recently. That's why I said it, Theo Kerner. I recently rewatched it. I tend to watch Empire of Dust once a year. Really, it's become something of a ritual. Gender-based refusal of handshakes. Based. Well, I mean, it's like Nordanon wrote. It's a confusing time we live in. It's all based with a big question mark behind it. Charlemagne says, only freaks drink carbonated water. Man has drank normal water for millions of years, but moderns require fizzy bubbles for some reason. I do agree. I mean, especially living where I live, there's no, like, I barely drink fizzy water. You said you drink more, Luddick.
I drink more of that. No problem defending it at all. I mean, it's. I mean, a lot of times in history, people just had to drink alcohol because the water is just completely either toxic or just completely unbearable. And you've used technologies to sort of make water more palatable. And I mean, if you're getting it from old sewage systems or old pipe systems, and there's like rust in your water, and like the stuff that you get on with these sparkly stuff, it's like it's easier to get it down with these taste additives. I have no problem with that at all.
You're a based grog enjoyer.
I have to drink this kind of like stale tap water from these old pipe systems to be based or whatever. It's just nonsense.
I like drinking the water from the stream. That is true based.
Yeah, that I like too as well. I mean, I had like my grandmother's house had like a stream going past, and the water was just stellar, and it came down from the mountain. And of course, if that stuff was coming out of my tap, then of course I'd just be drinking it. But
Leo is talking about my dark secret. I don't know what that is. He was talking about something earlier, about something being revealed about my past. I'm not sure what he's referring to.
Yeah, me neither.
I prefer the rust in my tap water to the usual lead. Oh, he's talking. Okay. Yeah, Leo posted I was going to say a meme in a chat earlier today. Element is having a hard time decrypting. Okay, what's this? It's something about the thing is, I can't show it now, but it's this old book which claims that people who have red hair are dwarves or something like that. And I think he's conflating because I have brown hair, but I tend to get red beard. My beard gets reddish, and then it gets a bit darker. So for some reason, this image isn't loading. Let me see if I can open it in a new tab. Nope, file can't be accessed. Not. Can I download it? I can download it. Okay, here we go. Here we go. I have it. Share screen. Riveting content, everyone. Here we go. Oh, this is this is in actual like Norwegian, so it's not gonna. It says the dwarf is. The dwarf steals a lot. He doesn't just take small stuff, but he runs off with your cows, and there's nothing you can do other than use an axe or the gun, the rifle. Though there has been tales of people who managed to strike him to death. You can often hear about the dwarves' love stories. He loves the girls and wants to be in their bed, and they often get pregnant with him. Such a child might be strangely created. Is that the might be different. If it's a girl, she will get a beard when she gets older, or she might be freckled, short. She might have a big head and red hair, and her hands and fingers will be large. So this is ancient Norwegian. So I think Leo is hinting that by my beard being red, I am partial dwarf. I'm not dwarf in height though, so
You should get the DNA tests immediately.
I should get the tests. Yeah, we're gonna have to. It's the birth certificate. Okay. Well, I think it is time to end the stream. Thank you everyone for listening. Thank you everyone for showing up. We appreciate you being here every week. On these allegations, I'm just going to quickly end the stream now and get out of the problem. Thank you everyone for watching. We will see you next week. Until then, have a great weekend.
Good night.